I'm really good at starting series and not finishing them. Hello there. I am here because I have finished A Heart So Fierce and Broken. I just did my nails and they match. Didn't even mean to do that. I don't know what I'm going to think when we get to the end, but I'm excited for the journey to the end. And the thing that I thought was going to cause the most issue in this book is not what's causing the most issue. I mean, it is indirectly, but it's not from a lack of conversating. That's not a word. Hi everybody, my name is Kelsey and we're about to get very nerdy with the third episode of Simplify My Series. So this is a series that I've been doing for a few months here on the channel, where it is basically, I have started a bunch of series. I'm really good at starting series and not finishing them. So I decided to create a series where I focus on doing just that. I've either started a series or are a couple of books into a series, and I just need that like push to finish it. So today we're going to be doing our third installment. I've only really been doing trilogies so far, because that's not true. I did the very first one I did was the Entangled with Fae series by Tessania Adet, which was a collection of, I mean, there was 4 that I had to read. I think there was 4. No, there's 3 that I had to read. There's 4 total. And that was a companion series. But this one is another trilogy. Hi. I love me my trilogies and my duologies. Big series scare the crap out of me. So a lot of these are going to be series and trilogies, but you probably already know this from the title, but it's going to be the Curse Breaker series by Bridget Kimmerer. I read the first one, A Curse So Dark and Lonely, for a vlog a couple of years ago, I want to say. Was that right? It was like hyped books that I was trying to figure out if I actually wanted to read them, if I liked them, that kind of thing. So this one I read and I really loved. It is a reimagining of sorts of Beauty and the Beast, but it continues in 2 other books, and I have them, and I flew through this one so quickly, and I picked these up like right after I finished it, and then I haven't touched them since. So we're gonna do that. We're gonna do this today. I'm actually in the process of reading a synopsis for the first one, just to kind of remind myself what happened. It's been like a year or 2, a year and a half maybe since I read this book, so like the big plot points are there, but all the little ones are not. So I'm trying to remind myself kind of what happened so that when we go into the next one, it'll make more sense. But like I said, this is a Beauty and the Beast retelling. This book follows our main character. I never can remember their names. I'm so good at this, I swear. So in this book, our Belle character is named Harper, and she does have cerebral palsy, and the book starts with her on a stakeout with her brother. I can't remember exactly if her brother's like a drug dealer or what, but he's struggling, and so she's the lookout for him, and she sees this guy who she doesn't know who it is, but his name is Gray, and he's kidnapping a girl, and she's like, we're not having that. So she confronts him, tries to get him to stop, and he takes her instead, and he takes her to this magical world. He takes her to Emberfall, and he shows her to the prince named Rune. And Rune? Rune? I can't remember how to pronounce his name, so we're just going to call him Rune for now, and then if I'm wrong, we'll fix it later. So he takes her there, and it is discovered that there's like this monster, and he is cursed, but she doesn't know and can't know about the curse, but it switches back and forth. So it's the 3 of them. Gray is his like captain of the guards, even though they live in this basically abandoned castle, and Harper's kind of helping Rune out. And because he's been hiding for so long, and this is his last season, as it's called, and basically what that means is every season Gray goes to a different world, kidnaps a woman, tries to bring her over to fall in love with Rune. If it doesn't work, then they send the woman back. And the woman the sorceress who cursed Rune says that this is going to be his last season. So he knows that if he can't make Harper fall in love with him, or Harper can't fall in love with him, then going to be permanently turned into this monster thing. So that's what the first one's about. We kind of go from there. I was a little more in depth, I think, with the synopsis than I would have normally because we are dealing with the second and the third in a series. With that being said, the other two books are A Heart So Fierce and Broken, which I believe is the second one, and A Vow So Bold and Deadly, which is the third one. I have both of these on my Audible, so I'm hoping to finish them this week. Would be great. This is my plan for the week, is to do these two books. I have had them on my shelves, like I said, for a very long time. I bought them right after I finished the first one, and here we are. So I'm excited. I'm excited. I know that sounded dubious, but like I really am excited. I've had these on my shelves forever. I have two other books that are by this author that I've heard are set in the same world, but I might be wrong about that. And that is the Defy the Night series. So I have those two that I debated on putting in this video, but I decided just to do this series for now. That's the plan. We're going to finish these two this week. Shouldn't be too hard. They are pretty short, not short, but they're shorter than the first one, I want to say. This one is about 450 pages, and this one's for sure shorter than that. This one's just barely 400 pages. So these should not be a problem. Let's see what the first one is. The first one is about 480, so we've got about 40 pages more in the first one. But if I remember correctly, the second one follows gray, but maybe I made that up. One of these I heard people didn't like it as much because it followed gray instead of the rest of the series, but I actually really enjoyed Gray as a character. I do remember that. So I'm excited either way. We're going to do it. We're finally going to finish the series and see what all the hype is about. And it feels like a good time to read it. We're starting to get into the fall. I am definitely in fall mode. I've already put up my decorations. I have brought out all of my fall mugs. As you can see, we've got the pumpkin one here. So I'm ready, okay? And fantasy, for a lot of people, feels like fall. It doesn't always feel like fall for me, but it has been feeling a lot like fall this year. So I'm really excited to dive into these two and see what it's about. So that's my plan. I'll come back to you when I have started A Heart So Fierce and Broken, and I'll be able to tell you a little bit more about what this is about, because I really don't know at all going into this what we're going to be getting into. So yeah, we'll see. I feel like, if I remember correctly, I gave the first one 4.5 stars. I don't think it got a full 5, but I'll look that up and let you know when I come to you next. But that's my plan. So let's see what happens. Hello, friends. I am here because I've reached the halfway point for A Heart So Fierce and Broken, which is the second book. I am actually a little bit above. I'm a little bit beyond the halfway point. I'm like 56%, maybe. I'm on page 246. So there we are. Chapter 27. I don't actually know how many chapters are in this book. There's 40-something chapters in this book. They're really, 50. Just kidding. There are 50 and an epilogue. So technically 51. So I'm here to kind of give you some internal beginning thoughts. What I'm discovering about this series is I did a check. I looked back to see when I read the first one, and it was the summer of 2021, I think. So it's been 2 full years since I read the first one, and I can tell because it feels like I'm diving into a new world almost, even though I've gone back and I've rewatched my thoughts in the vlog that I kind of mentioned earlier when I was reading the first one. And I did like a whole online dive, found a synopsis to try to figure out what the first one was about so I didn't like miss any of the details. So I know the story, and it's all there, and which is good because there's definitely some things that happened that I was like, who are these people again? But it still feels really bizarre because it's like I'm going into a brand new world, even though I'm not, and I know the story. I don't know how to explain it. It's really strange for my brain. But this story is the one that follows Gray. So I think I forgot to mention it in the beginning, but I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go spoiler-free on this book and the third book, but I am going to spoil the first book because I think that's going to be the easiest option to talk about these books is by talking about what happened in the first book. So here's your warning that I am going to spoil the first book. I'm not sure in what ways yet, but things might come up. So in this book, what we have is the very first chapter. This switches points of view, and I have the audiobook, and we have dual narrators, which makes me really happy. So the very first chapter is in Harper's point of view, and it's her kind of talking to Ren. Why did I think his name was Rune? I don't know, but his name is Ren, and he is the king, prince, person, and the whole plot point with this book is that after the events of the first book, there's this rumor that there's another heir, and that when Lilith died, who was the person who cursed Rune for the first book, I'm envisioning like Mother Gothel from Rapunzel, Tangled, and it might be because I'm gonna deep dive and no one cares, but on the show Cheers, there's a character, Frasier, who had his own show, all that fun stuff. In the show Cheers, he married a woman named Lilith, who looks a little bit like Mother Gothel. So I think that's why I envision it. That's not important, but she's the one who cursed him. She's supposedly the last sorceress, but when she dies at the end of the first book, she gives all of her powers to Gray, who kills her. And it's also just kind of like if a sorcerer kills another sorcerer, I think they inherit the power. I think that's why Gray got all the power. But there's this rumor going around that Ren is not the only heir. And no one really knows who the other heir is. Ren doesn't know who the other heir is, but he's got like a lot of people against him because of that. And they think that he's not the true heir of the throne, and so they're questioning a bunch of stuff with him. And so the whole plot point of this book is that Gray knows the truth, he's the heir, and he is hiding from Harper and Ren because he knows that Ren's going to kill him if he finds out. Well, Ren's just going to kill whoever is the heir because he thinks that he deserves the rightful heir. Gray's staying away to protect all of them. And so that's kind of where we start. So we have the first, like I said, the first chapter is in Harper's perspective. It's kind of her talking a little bit about a little bit of a synopsis, so you kind of know what happened in the first book, but mostly it's her, you see her and her interaction with Ren, her brother who was brought over to this world from DC, and his boyfriend, Noah, who's a doctor, but they of course call him a healer and all that kind of stuff. And so the two of them want to go back, so they decide to go off to try to find Gray, because Gray is the only one who can take them back to DC. So that's the first chapter, and then we immediately go into Gray's point of view, and then we switch back and forth between Gray and this woman named Leah Mara. I always want to say her name is Maria. Leah Mara, who is the oldest daughter of this woman who's a rival. I'm going deep dive, I do apologize. She's a daughter of a rival country, and the woman who's the queen of this rival country caused a lot of issues in the first book, had lots of fighting, lots of battles, that kind of stuff. And so Leah Mara is not the heir, her younger sister is, because in this world the queen can choose which one's the heir, but she is the older sister. And so her sister is very much like her mom, very brutal, very let's, they fought our people, let's fight their people kind of thing. And Leah Mara is very I want to speak and words and communicate, and that's going to be my way of helping. And she's very, very, very clever. And so far in the story, she and her mother and her sister have all come over to Ren to basically propose that he marries her sister in a way to create peace between their two countries. He obviously is in love with Harper and is absolutely not, and so he sends them away, but Leah Mara comes back and hopes that if she can talk to Ren, then maybe they will be able to come to an understanding, but he takes it as a sign of aggression, and so he kidnaps her. And then stuff happens, and Gray ends up being taken back to this castle as well, and he and Leah Mara end up meeting. And so where we're at in the story, about halfway through, they are kind of going on an adventure. The two of them, Harper's brother, his boyfriend Noah, and is that it? Oh, there's a young boy that has become really close with Gray, and so he has come along for the ride. I cannot pronounce his name to save my life. I'm listening to the audiobook and I still don't know. Tycho, something like that. It's Tycho. Tycho, I think, is correct. I'll have to pay attention again when they do it in the book, because every time they say his name, I'm always like, what is happening? And then there's also this magical creature who is giving me gargoyle vibes. And so they're on an adventure of their own, and that's kind of where we're at. So what I'm discovering about these stories is they are super addictive. I basically started this yesterday, and I read almost 200 pages, maybe a little bit less than 200 pages yesterday. Granted, I am listening to it on audio, but still, the ability to like dive through this so quickly is what I remember about the first one. And I did look back and I did give the first one 4.5 stars. So I was correct on my thoughts there. I don't think this is a 5-star series because it feels like every other YA romance, fantasy romance that I've read, every other YA fantasy book where the main girl has like somewhat of a love triangle. Like, it's very clear that the author is trying to make, which I remember happening in the first book a little bit, a love triangle of sorts between Ren, Harper, and Gray. But Gray is so noble that he clearly has feelings for Harper and has for a while, but is not acting on it because he considers Ren a brother, and we find out that they are brothers, but like they're super, super close, or they were before this book, and he's not going to act on it. And then there's another romance obviously in here that I think the author is pushing just based on some of the scenes that we've had recently. So I am discovering, now that I've read this, Ren is giving me hardcore Tamlin vibes from ACOTAR. Like, based on some of the stuff in this book, he's acting out of fear, out of feeling abandoned by Gray. Like, there's a lot of things that are happening here, and he's kind of, it's coming out as very, very aggressive, controlling ruler. Fair. That's the vibes that we get from Tamlin when we're in Akamath, the second book. So that was an interesting thing to realize. Also, I don't like Harper in this book. I remember really liking her in the first one. I thought she was really strong. Because she has cerebral palsy, there's a lot of conversation about her and how she is able to do certain things. Like, I remember in the first book, Gray teaches her how to like throw a knife and protect herself and things like that, and that's stuff that she didn't know before. And because of her cerebral palsy, a lot of people look at her a little bit differently and a little bit weaker because of that, and so she kind of jumps over that to show that she can be amazing. In this book, she seems like a super, super big pushover. It's giving me, because I can't help but relate it back to ACOTAR, it's giving me Feyre at the beginning of Akamath vibes. So it's very, very similar to that, and I'm super worried because the character of Liamara is super strong, super smart, like I mentioned. Like, she put together who Gray was, why he didn't show up, all this stuff just by looking at him and trying to like go through her mind of like, okay, he clearly thinks that Rune, like, loves Rune like a brother. Why would he not come back at this stuff? Oh, I can tell that he immediately has feelings for Harper just by looking at him and the way that he looks at her. And so like she can pick up stuff. She looks at people and like figures out, like, for example, one of the things in the first book is that because they're from DC, they kind of create this narrative for Harper that she's the princess of DC, D-I-S-I, and so they have this big force that's going to come, and like kind of all these promises that Ren has made, and they make her brother the prince of DC and all this kind of stuff. And within like 5 or 10 minutes of talking to her brother when they're on this journey, she figures out that DC is not real, and that there's actually, I mean, DC is real, but like it's not a country. She, Harper, and her brother are not royalty. They have no anything to help them out. Like, she figures things out so quickly. I love her. She's my new favorite character. And I like Gray as a character. He was one that I think was my favorite in the first book, if I remember my thoughts correctly, and that's definitely transitioned into this one as well. So I think it's really interesting going into this book and having so much time between them, because I don't know if I had read this right after the first one, if my thoughts on like Harper, for example, would have been the same. But she's kind of a pushover. I mean, she's doing stuff to help Gray because she cares about him and she's worried about him and she doesn't want Rune to kill him, but at the same time she's still going to go hang out and stay with Rune because she loves him, and she's letting Gray do all the hard stuff on his own. So there's definitely a lot here that I cannot stand. And so I'm a little worried about the third book because I think we go back to, I think I looked at it, because all the chapters have like the name of whose perspective we're in, and so I saw the other one has Harper and Gray and Rune, and it goes back and forth between the original characters. So like, yes, it'll be interesting to get back in their heads, but also I love these characters and I don't want to go back in their heads, so I'm a little conflicted, but I'm interested to see how it's going to end. We have a lot of stuff to go down. I don't know plot-wise where we're going to go from here, to be honest. The first one, because it was a Beauty and the Beast retelling, was very clear to me. Like, I didn't know all the details and I didn't know the reimagined elements of it, but I knew how things were going to go because of it being a reimagining of Beauty and the Beast. This one, I have no idea. Even the synopsis on the side, like in the dust jacket has already, like everything that's in that has already happened. So I don't really know where we're gonna go. But I did really enjoy my time with this so far. Again, I think this is going to be a series that I really enjoy reading, but it's not going to stick with me. I could see myself, once I've finished it, and like, I know like I've only barely started the second book and we still have a whole book and a half to go, but like I could very easily see myself in like a few months deciding to unhaul these books and give them to somebody else, because I enjoyed my time reading them and I really liked them, but it's not something that I like need to hold on to, you know, like I don't have a personal connection to them like I do with other books. So this is very interesting going into this, because I think my expectations are very middle of the road. Like I know I'm going to enjoy my time reading these books, and I'm very interested to see where things are going to go. I definitely had some jaw-dropping moments. A couple of them happen already. I have no idea where the story's going to go. So those are my thoughts so far. I'm enjoying it. I really am. And like I said, I plowed through like 2.5 hours last night before bed, and I like was very into the story. So when I'm reading, I'm very into it, but like I do feel like I haven't picked it up once today and it's already 4:30. So it's going to be one of those, I don't really know. I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to think when we get to the end, but I'm excited for the journey to the end. Okay, so I just finished this book a little bit earlier today, and I gave it 4 stars. I think a lot of my opinions when I came to do my mid-book check-in for this one are the same. I really enjoyed this. The ending, I did have a couple of jaw-dropping moments. Some stuff that like I feel was very, plot-wise, I feel was very obvious, and you know, I knew we needed to get to an end goal, but I wasn't sure how we were going to get to the end goal. And this really did it, and I think the most convenient and predictable way, but I also didn't see it coming because I wasn't really paying attention to how to get to the end goal, if that makes any sense at all. Like there was some stuff that happened in the second half of this book that, now that I know what happened, there's definitely some moments in here that were leading up to it, and our characters talked about it, and it was very clear. I just thought it was going to go a different way, or a different person was going to do those actions. So I am very interested to see how this is going to end. The epilogue, it does, like I kind of mentioned when I was talking about this earlier, it switches back and forth between Gray, and I do this every freaking time. Leah Mara is her name. It switches back and forth between those perspectives, but the epilogue is in Ren's perspective, and some bombs got dropped. I wasn't ready for that thing to happen, and this person kind of showed up, and I was like, excuse me, where did you come from? So I loved it. Is it going to stay in my head for a very long time? No. It's probably going to disappear by the end of the month, but I loved it. 4 stars. I think I had the same opinions when I was reading the first one. It's not ridiculously unique. There's nothing spectacular about the writing or anything like that, but I am emotionally connected to the characters, and I did really enjoy this book. So this is a very strange series for me, because I know it's not going to be impactful in the long run, but I'm enjoying it. And I understand why people who maybe liked certain characters wouldn't enjoy the second one, but the second one, being in Gray's and Leah Mara's perspective, is so important for the story that I'm very interested to see what the next one is. So I did it. I finished this book, which means, if I can get it, which means that now I have to start A Vow So Bold and Deadly, which is the 3rd and final book in the series. I'm also curious, because I really read somewhere that her other series, Defy the Night, is related to this, and I can't figure out if it's like related by world or what, because those synopses I don't think have anything to do with this world. But again, I have 1 book left, so we'll see, maybe something in here pops it. I don't know, but I'm interested to see where we're gonna go. I don't have any idea, but I do know that this switches back and forth. We have Ren, Harper, Gray, and Leah Mara's perspective. So you've got all 4 of the characters that we have kind of come to know in the previous 2 books. This book follows all their different perspectives, which makes sense because our characters are kind of like all over the place and in different places in this world. So it makes sense why they would have all their perspectives. It is a full cast recording. My audiobook did have 4 different narrators, which is really interesting. I guess technically this book did have 4 narrators as well, because we did have a chapter from Harper and a chapter from Wren, which were different narrators than the other 2 that we saw for most of it. But still, very interested to see. It is the shortest one in the series, so it shouldn't take me too long. It's barely 400 pages. And the last one was about 450, and the first one was about 480. I know I've already said this, so I don't know why I'm repeating it. But it's the shortest one, so I'm interested to see where the story's going to end, because we definitely have a rock and a hard place situation where you've got some people who have some third parties pulling the strings, and they can't talk about their problems because of fear, or because of, you know, they're being not controlled, but they're being watched by certain people, so they can't actually tell certain things. And of course, I wouldn't say it's miscommunication, because that's not true, but there is some lack of communication that I'm interested to see how we're going to go. Like, I know there's going to be a battle of sorts in this one based on how the other ones went, but I don't know how we're going to end. So I'm very interested to see where we go from here. I have loved the other 2, so we will dive into this one and hopefully finish tomorrow. We'll see. But if I can get about 200 pages read, which my audiobooks are, I listen to them because the narrators are really slow, so I actually have been listening to these on 2 times speed, which I don't do a whole lot, but I do when the narrators are crazy slow. And for some reason, these books, the narrators have been really slow. So honestly, these audiobooks are about 12 hours. I can probably finish them in about 6. So 3 hours today, 3 hours tomorrow. That should be totally fine, doable. We'll see. Anyway, so we're starting the third one, and the third and final one in this vlog. I'll let you know when I get close to halfway, a little over, a little under, depending on when I feel is a good way to stop, and let you know my thoughts, because I'm interested to see what's going to happen, because like I said, big bomb dropped at the end of the second one, and I have many a question, and I need all of my answers. So I am very excited. This has been great. Definitely getting me back into the fantasy mode, which is good for the fall season. I have many fantasy books that I would like to get to, and kind of getting me into the fall vibe, especially because I feel like A Heart So Fierce and Broken took place at the end of summer, beginning of fall, like within kind of like now, this time period, or this time of the year. So I'm excited. I'll let you know what my thoughts are when I reach the halfway point in this one. Hello. Okay, so last night, I made it a little over halfway in A Vow So Bold and Deadly. I am on page 230, chapter 25. There you go. So just a little over halfway, and I'm really enjoying it. It's definitely, I think, the hardest one for me to get into, which is weird considering that it's the most action-packed one, I think, so far, as well as like the shortest one. It's the end of the trilogy. You'd think that I would be like very invested, but I was hoping to finish this before the end of the week, and it's currently Sunday, and today is my last day that I can finish this. So we're gonna plow through this today. I have a little over 2.5 hours in the audiobook at my speed, so I can definitely do this. It's a sports day. My husband will be watching lots of football, so I will be on the couch or doing other stuff, and I'll have it in my ear. So I'm not too worried about finishing it today. I just am worried about having thoughts, I guess, is my biggest concern right now. But from what I can get halfway through, but it takes place almost in like directly after the events of the second one, which is good. We have a couple of different couples that we're following, and I do enjoy them. They are probably my favorite part of this. There's a couple of them, like there's one that I'm thinking of specifically that has had a lot of issues in the past book and the beginning of this book, and they really kind of like come full circle. There's something that comes out at the end of the second book, which I kind of mentioned a little bit. It's a pretty large cliffhanger, or reveal, I guess is the better phrase than cliffhanger, but it is something that I could see the potential going into this book having a lot of issues. Like, it's not a miscommunication thing, it's a lack of, it's kind of like a rock and a hard place. One of our characters can't really explain some stuff that's going on for fear of the bad people, I guess. And I thought that was going to be a huge issue in this book, but actually it comes out pretty early on. And we're seeing the character of Harper, who we didn't really see in the second book. And I know I mentioned when we were talking about the second book, we don't see her a lot in her head. So because of that, I think she felt very distant from us, and I kind of was disappointed in her as a character and as a person maybe. But in this book, because we are switching back and forth between all four perspectives in here, we get back in her head. And yes, she's not as strong as I think I remember her being in the beginning, like the very first book, because the first book is so heavily talking about, well, it's her story, so like we really get her perspective and her struggle with having cerebral palsy and being able to like stand up for herself and having people look at her differently because of the way she walks. That is still a thing in here, but I think, I don't know, there's just something about her that's not like, she doesn't stand up for herself as much as I think she used to. And I mean, they're in a tough situation. There's definitely some stuff going on that's not great and is not the easiest to deal with, but I think any issue that was had in different relationships is being talked about, which is good, because it's really, really easy in books, specifically YA books, for our couples to not talk about their problems. It is so easy for them to just get into their own head and not deal with it together, which is understandable when these characters are younger. It's easier to do when it's in an adult book, I think, because you have adult characters and in theory they would talk about their problems. So one of the biggest things that me and my friend Lauren like to complain about with books is that our main characters don't talk about their problems. And what I like about this series is that there is a little bit of that, because they're all in their own heads, and there's all four of them are, while they're going through the same thing, it's still hard. They're all like different. They're all going through it in a different way. But they do eventually kind of, I'm thinking of one couple specifically, but they do kind of eventually come back together and talk everything through. And even if there is some strife, they work through it. So it is a very adult way of looking at a relationship, which I appreciate in a fantasy world. So it's very good, and I liked that element. And the thing that I thought was going to cause the most issue in this book is not what's causing the most issue. I mean, it is indirectly, but it's not from a lack of conversating. That's not a word. It's not from a lack of conversation, and like, it's not because they're not talking about it, it's just because of the situation they find themselves. So I am enjoying it. I definitely ended on a lot bit of a cliffhanger, actually, in the middle of this, like the end of this chapter. Which one was I on? I just ended chapter 24. And so there was definitely some stuff that happened that I was convinced while reading it was a dream, or it was like an illusion, and magic was making this thing not actually happen. But based on how this next chapter begins, it definitely did happen. And so now I'm very stressed about this. So I'm definitely going to plow through this one today. I don't see where I can't finish it, I guess. So far so good. You know, I feel like I'm not as hyped for this one as I maybe was for the second one, but I'm definitely in a section of the story where it's going to get interesting, and I know how the story is going to end. I feel like there's a very clear way that the story can end. I just don't know how we're going to get there, if that makes sense. So yeah, those are kind of my mid-book thoughts. I don't have too many, really, and I'm afraid the end of the book thoughts are going to be basically what I just said. So we'll see what happens, but I'm interested to see how this series is going to end. I have really enjoyed the other books in the series. I'm excited to try her other trilogy, although I think I am going to wait until the third one comes out, because reading it like this is helpful. I'm not the biggest binger when it comes to series, but I'm thinking that that's probably a good option, at least for this series. I should not have put as much time between the first and second book, so I think I'm going to hold off on her other trilogy that I've got until the third one comes out, which I think comes out next year. But I'm enjoying it. We'll see what happens. I am invested in our characters, but I'm definitely more invested in one couple over the other, and it's not the one that I was originally obsessed with. It's the one that we kind of get in the second book. So yeah, I am conflicted about my feelings, and I'm excited to see how this is gonna turn out in the end. I did it, friends. I finished A Vow So Bold and Deadly, and I gave it 4 stars. The second half of this really moved, okay? And there's a few things in here. I was literally explaining this to Chris. There's a few things in here, a couple of plot things that happen near the end, especially with our Leah Mara character. And just a couple of things that are mentioned. Okay, that, how am I going to phrase this? There are definitely a couple of things in here that made this feel less YA than the other books. Now, it's still categorized as YA, even though I'm pretty sure the oldest character of our main 4 is Gray, and I feel like he mentioned he was 20 in this book. So they're definitely, I think, all above the age of 18. I want to say maybe one of them is 17. I'm not 100% sure. So I've got some questions, honestly, about some things that happened in here. There's one thing that happened near the end that was a trope that a lot of people dislike, and it surprised me that it would show up in a YA book. But at the same time, it kind of like, it helped the plot a little bit. There's a couple of things. It didn't help like the romance plot, like that was not an issue. It was like a couple of things of how this was going to happen and a couple of things with how this was going to end. It helped with that part, but otherwise I did not really see why it needed to be a thing. And also, one of our characters who's like, they were going on a mission of sorts through the woods, and she was mentioning a couple of things and literally even said like she got not kidnapped, she got held by her opposing force, and they could have done anything to her. They could have assaulted her in some way, and like even used those words. And I was like, what is this YA or is this not YA? I have questions, okay? But like nothing was on the page. Like there was definitely some smuttier scenes, let's say, or no, there weren't. There was hints at some relationships that took it to the next level, but of course everything was fade to black, so we didn't really see it, which was fine. But there was just a couple of things that happened in the later half of this book that had me questioning the YA status of it. But I also don't think it was new adult. And I know that YA, new adult, and adult, and all that kind of stuff is categorized by the age of the main characters. So technically this would be new adult in a sense. But at the same time, this felt very YA. I know that I'm just kind of going in circles here, but that's my thoughts. That is kind of a few things that I thought of, but I loved the end of this. It was aggressive in the best way. Plot-wise, things really took a turn. We ended where I wanted us to end, which was good. I didn't quite know how we were going to get there, but it was a journey getting there, and I like seriously, ever since the like halfway point where I stopped it to come talk to you guys last time when I was doing my like mid-book check-in, since then, it just kind of kept going, and there was so much plot stuff that I didn't expect to happen, but it just kind of was perfect. So it got 4 stars. I really enjoyed this one. It did become actually like one of my favorites in the series, weirdly enough, but I feel very similarly to all 3 of these. So I don't really have any grand thoughts about this, except for that the second half was significantly better than the first half, and I am so glad that I read this series because now I know what all the hype is about. And I didn't realize that they had come out so recently, per se. Like the author wrote this book during 2020, and this one came out in 2021. And so I'm pretty sure like these came out as things were going on. Yeah, because this one came out in 2020, and then the first one, I don't actually know when the first one came out. The first one came out in 2019. So yeah, it was 2019, 2020, and 2021. But this was a really good 4-star series. I'm really glad that I read it, because let's be honest, I would not have gotten to these books anytime soon. And they gave me perfect fall vibes. That's what I wanted. It was very like, I don't want to say light fantasy because that's not true. It's very fantastical worlds and everything like that. But it was light fantasy in the sense that it got me back into it. Like I think I'd overstimulated myself on the amount of fantasy that I read over the summer. So I was very worried about getting into the fall, because for me, fall is mysteries and witchy books, and witchy books always come with fantastical elements. So I was very worried about that. But this, I think, was perfect. There was just enough fantastical elements. Obviously, it was a different world, so it was a little different, but it wasn't too much. It was all very understandable. Everything clicked in my head. So this was perfect for right now to get back into the fantasy elements. And I did it, guys. I finished the Scribd series by Bridget Kimmerer, and for the first time, and I think ever, every single book in the series got the exact same rating, which was a 4-star. So this was definitely a very, very good series. It was not my new favorite. All of my thoughts are pretty similar to when I talked to you last about them. I don't think this is going to be my new favorite series by any stretch of the imagination. I think the characters are good. There's definitely some stuff about them that bothers me, but also some stuff that I liked. Like, I had an issue with Harper throughout this, but she became much better near the end of this. Like, when we saw her, she kind of gets overshadowed by Ren a lot, and so she kind of went off on her own a little bit in this story, and because of that, we really got to see her be very strong-willed again, which was really nice to see. But at the same time, then we also got to see Ren kind of figure some stuff out. So that was nice to see, but she was definitely not my favorite character by the end. I still think Liamara is out of the 4, Liamara and Gray are my favorites. Gray kind of stays my favorite, but he really has a huge character. Well, they all kind of have character development and character changes throughout the series, but I think their relationship is my favorite. I like Liamara's character, I think, out of the 4 the most, even though we don't meet her until the 2nd book. Just there's something about her that she is everything I wanted Harper to be. She is so smart, yet she is not quick to anger, and she's not fast to go to violence right away, which her sister is and her mother is. So she's very much I want to keep the peace, I want to make this work, and because of that, I think her character works so well in this world. And all 4 of our main characters really have such different ways of looking at the world and such different ways of interacting with each other, and they bring so much to the table, which is great. And I'm really excited about this series. What fascinates me is that the big main issue is, we have a conclusion to that issue, but there's still this other thing that, isn't particularly solved. And we see a path to solving it, but we don't have a solution yet. So there is some stuff that's up in the air. So now that I know the series, I'm going to have to go back and see how Defy the Night connects to this world. So if you know, let me know. It might be super obvious, and now that I've read it, I can see it, but without having read them, I wasn't quite sure what the connection was. But I'm really interested to see that series. This was a good time. This was a really good time, and I'm glad that I read it. So I hope you guys enjoyed coming along as I finished this series. Let me know if there's a series that you would like to see me do. I do have a series update that I did earlier this year. It's kind of something that I think I'm going to bring around every single year, just to kind of say where we're at. So if you want to check that out, I'll leave it linked above. But if there's ever a series that you guys know that I have started and not finished, I would love to know what you think I should do in this series. I have so many that I definitely have an abundance of options, but I definitely want to know what you guys would like my thoughts on, if you care one way or the other. But I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. Obviously, let me know if you've read the series, what you thought on it down below. But if you liked this video, and I very much hope that you did, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe down below if you'd like to be part of this awesome growing family. I've also got all my social media down there, as well as other fun bookish links. So check all that out, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!